trade is a very important aspect of a country's trajectory to development. No matter what you do, whatever you produce must be projected out there in the world of international trade to see what you can get for your production, because no country is an island. As much as you trade, you also buy things from abroad. But now Nigeria has instituted a new government. The point now is, as the government is settling down, what is our projection? What is our projection for international trade in Nigeria? How well have we done in the recent past? And what's the way forward? Also, we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. How well is that going? How well is Nigeria represented? And in the few trades that have been actually consummated on that platform, how well is Nigeria doing? How much have we done? We did not quite join on time the way we should have. We're not probably driving the process the way we should have, given that Nigeria is supposed to be the largest economy in Africa. And even on trade, we have a Nigerian, Dr. Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, heading the World Trade Organization, meaning that we should be even a major stakeholder in terms of trade in Africa. Anyway, some of these things are as crucial as they are, they're also quite technical. Joining us to discuss today is Mr. Leo Ugbaja, a lawyer and a trade expert. Welcome, Leo.
Thank you, Takwe. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. You listened to some of my introduction. What's your take on trade and Nigeria? Where do we stand presently?
Well, I'll start by saying that trade is an economic activity, but it's also a political activity, especially when you talk about international trade. So you can't divorce trade from geopolitics. Economically speaking, Nigeria could do better. We could do better. We have huge untapped potential in terms of export, but we have a basic problem of productivity. And when you look at low productivity, you're looking at what are the factors that contribute to low productivity. We usually say lack of enabling environment, but that's what it is. But you can then reduce them specifically to issues relating to infrastructure, especially power, logistics infrastructure, that's road and rail and connectivity. You look at port facilities and the procedures at the port. You look at even attitude of public sector in terms of regulation and policy making. Regulation, you have multiple regulatory challenges where you see regulation as rent extraction. The public sector wanting to extract as much rent as possible from major players in the economy. That's a problem. If the rules are there, the rules are transparent, and everybody can look at the rules and follow them, then things will not be bad. But in this case, most times the rules are opaque. And even when the rules are transparent, someone tells you, oh, that's what is written. You just have to keep finding your way around. So in totality, when you add up these different, I call them frictions or irritations, in the process of trading, you increase the cost of transaction.
Yes.
Now, when your transaction cost increases within your borders, then you automatically become, your products are no longer competitive when you're exporting, So I usually cite this, even though it was many years ago, but I think it's still very relevant. Around 2007, 2008, when we were negotiating the Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria came up with a report and that said that by the mere fact of producing in Nigeria, you already have a 30% disadvantage in your cost compared to your peers within the West African region. So where we are right now is that we are not taking the issue of trade very seriously, and that shows on the fact that we're not taking productivity seriously.
Yes.
And if we want to move away from where we are right now, we have to rethink productivity. We have to sit down and ask ourselves, what are those inhibitors to our productivity as a nation? And then we could begin to address them, and I hope we'll be able to address some of them.
Fantastic. I wanted to say the bodies you belong to, and given your experience in trade, and of course knowing the importance of trade to national development, are you guys pushing forward to ensure that this new administration that has come in also understand what the issues are, and that we actually really make salutary amend and move forward on these issues?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So, so for example, I mean, I'm actively involved in the Trade and Competitive Commission of the NESG, and specifically I lead the trade thematic group in the NESG NESBA configuration. So within that platform, I get to contribute a lot to policy making, apart from my other direct engagements with other government and non-government agencies. Now, the problem has always been the politics of it. You know, I started saying the politics and the economics of it.
Okay.
You need strong political will to drive the reforms, to improve productivity, to improve your trade. I think the problems are well known. I think the solutions are also well known in terms of, you know, okay, I'll give you a good example. The entire argument of whether we should remove subsidy or not, whether we should float the exchange rate or not, you know, and all that, whether we should protect this or protect that, you know, the solutions were known. The policies the past administration took and their counterproductive impact were all seen, you know. So it was almost a no-brainer for someone to say, well, let's do away with this. At least we know where we're coming from. The future may be uncertain, but we could then try to police that future to make it what we want it to be. But what we know is that where we're coming from is not the ideal, you know. So what is required is the political will. I'll give you another example, the customs. You know, we've had this bottleneck with the clearance of goods at the ports. And Nigeria has consistently performed poorly in the doing business ranking when it comes to trading across border. And it has a lot to do with the time, the procedures, you know, and the costs of clearing goods at our borders. And what were the things we were lacking? We were lacking basic electronic scanners that could scan containers without you having to do manual physical inspection on the containers. You know, we needed an efficiently integrated electronic single window system, you know, where all the operators within the export and import value chain could interface and, you know, issue their clearances, tick the boxes, you know, and then the trader carries their container at the other end, you know. Now, custom had something that looked like that, you know, that wasn't fully integrated. So, but when you come to the interagency rivalry, you know, the political shoulder brushing and all that, you know, so we're not able to do things in the best interest of the nation. Because you just look at some of those things, they are really inexplicable, you know. But now we needed someone at the top who could call the shots.
Honestly,
So I had a brief stint with PEBEC, you know, and PEBEC did incredible work in the past administration. If I am of the opinion that if 50% or 60% of all PEBEC initiated reforms were implemented, Nigeria probably would have gone very far in terms of ease of trading and ease of doing business generally. But PEBEC reforms were not always implemented. The responsibility to implement was on the government agencies, you know, whether the customs, CAC, you know, that and that, you know. But most times you realize that the institutional dynamics within those agencies just made it impossible to implement some of those reforms. Now, those kind of dynamics required political stick-wielding from the top. Consequence management.
Invariably,
And to my opinion, consequence management was poor.
For example, you know, I would like to ask you two questions. The first thing, a double-barrel question. The first one is, you've been mentioning, you know, the something akin to the quality of goods we sell or that we have, or rather, you've been mentioning productivity. And that reminds me of the concept of, you know, economic complexity in terms of value add to the products that we sell. I wanted to make a comment on that. But perhaps more importantly, I personally have had, you know, a consistent problem with what goes on at our airports. And recently, on my way back from Kenya, I lost it with what I saw in Lagos Airport. To the extent they kind of arrested me and made me write a statement.
Interesting.
I said, look, this place cannot continue like this. There was one standing fan, I mean, a standing AC where the immigration point is, and invariably maybe a rat had died inside that AC. And they were blowing all that air in the faces of people. Look. And again, a certain European gentleman was traveling recently, made a post on Twitter as we speak, and, you know, about the fact that he got to Nigeria's airport, people were prodding him. There were so many drivers approaching him, and this one, he had to stop and say, "Stop touching me, come on."
Yeah.
Why would it be so incredibly difficult to fix our airports, for example? Because also part of trade, for example.
Yeah.
So part of the perception people have of your country.
Yeah.
So on one hand is that question about economic complexity, and also this basic issue. I mean, you can imagine that if we have so much problem with customs in the ports, okay, and of course we had probably mentioned shoulder rubbing, people claiming territory. The same thing at our airports. In fact, my last travel, I was on my way to London, and there's this in Abuja here, which is still a more decent place to travel.
Very decent.
Once you get in, there's this battery of NDLEA custom, and they were kind of harassing this American-Nigerian boy, a good-looking boy, speaking Americana and all of that. And they're saying, "Open your bag." And the boy was saying, "Why should I?" So the thing was going on. They were threatening that I will make sure you don't travel today. So I had to go to them and say, "Look, guys, take it easy on this guy. Talk to him nice. These are our children, our brothers. We want them to come back home as well."
Exactly.
They know it's not, Eventually, when I saw him in the aircraft, I had to apologize to him for the way we had behaved. So these two things, how do we solve this problem? Economic complexity and all of this power play that's going on. Or do you think this can be solvable under this new administration? And how do we actually paint the picture to them clearly? Because again, many of the guys who are the top dogs, they don't travel through these normal airports. Even if they import something, whatever they are clearing comes in express. Many times they don't even pay for any of these things themselves. Maybe the state will pay, whatever kind of arrangement. So they may not know what we are going through.
Okay, let me start from your last point about the people at the top really not knowing these issues. I'll say that's why it's important for you to maintain a clear channel of feedback, beyond the official channels. Yeah. So, for example, the TVs, the radios, the newspapers, there are columnists who write and all that, So, but it's also an indictment if someone at the top has people is surrounded by people who don't tell them the truth, because you basically get around you people who are like you. So they should know. That's not an excuse. They should know. But even if they don't, then they should find, if people around them don't tell them, then they should find alternative ways of filling the pulse of the people they govern. Now, let me go to the question about productivity and economic complexity. Now, economic complexity is about accumulation of capabilities.
Absolutely.
So when you look at where we are right now, we are essentially an extractive economy.
Exactly.
So oil and gas, agriculture, this and that, Now, ideally, we should have progressed. And I'll suggest a trajectory of progression that we have missed over the years. The trajectory of progression is that you move from extracting oil and gas, mostly by IOCs, to extraction mostly by local, which we are doing more of that now, Now, then you move to refining, to industrial production of petrochemicals. That's industrialization based on extractive industry. But do you know the apex of this value chain? The apex of this value chain is when you become a milling factory for expertise.
Oh, I see. So begin to export
expertise.
The experts in
so it happens. You come to the point where if they say we need experts or somebody needs to study petroleum engineering, for example, Nigerian universities, Nigeria should have the best universities teaching petroleum engineering, the best research on petroleum engineering. It should come from Nigeria. So it's a value chain. You have to move. And you accumulate these capabilities as you move along the value chain. And the more you're able to do, the more you're able to do. That's the way it works. It keeps compounding. Now, and that takes us to the point of skills, education. You can't talk about a productive economy or talk about trade without having properly skilled persons. Vocational, theoretical, and all that. You need all of that, to be able to do the actual work.
Exactly.
Now, so if you're an investor looking to invest somewhere, you want to look at the concentration of skilled capital, skilled labor within that environment.
Absolutely.
So infrastructure, industrialization, accumulation of skills is what will move you from that primary rent-based economy into a productive economy.
Okay, you know, I'll have to cut you short there. We'll go on a quick break, but you know, it's a very interesting point you have made about that meal. But I was going to say, but we've been churning out petroleum engineers in the Uniport since God knows when they started Uniport, you know, Niger Delta University, all sorts, you know. And yet none of them can actually, none of those universities has capacity to refine 1 barrel of crude. But we are the co-fire boys who are showing us that this is not supposed to be a big deal. But that's when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've been discussing with Mr. Leo Gbaja on the very important, pertinent subject of international trade, Nigeria, which way forward, especially given this new regime, this new administration that has come on board in Nigeria. Welcome back, Leo.
Thank you.
And so we're making that point about skills, and I said, listen, you know, all these universities, how do we actually get them to see this vision, to take them forward, whether universities, polytechnic, whatever.
Yeah.
What are we training if by now, like you said, we haven't actually been able to achieve that milestone? Even though somehow we have, you know, maybe not at the level that we should, because the other time I remember I was in Tanzania, and no, not Tanzania, I was in Uganda.
Yeah.
And I think in Total or something, and Uganda had just discovered some crude oil. When I went there on some reference, it was a Nigerian guy I met. Yeah. Equally in Kenya.
Yeah, even in Angola, you see them.
However, maybe not the kind of numbers are supposed to be, because by now we shouldn't be having so many of the expatriates still coming into that sector.
You're coming to the point.
Yeah.
So the expertise, Nigerians are incredible people. You know, we make something out of nothing. So the fact that we see Nigerians here and there doesn't really say to the quality of what they are getting. The average Nigerian will find their way. You know, they'll study, go to overseas, get their qualifications.
Chances are they are there as British citizens.
As British citizens. So, but the true measure to me would be when our institutions of learning become reference points. So we say that this skill accumulation is localized.
Yeah, exactly.
We are looking at the institutions now. You know, so you could say, oh, you're in the US, you want to study the latest technology in petroleum engineering. You know, you count 10 universities and the Nigerian universities there. You know, anyway, but even moving out from there, the whole point about it is that you need to progress from one stage of the economy to the other. You need to consistently grow. Exactly, and what this takes, it takes, politics doesn't help. Politics is, especially in Nigeria, it's like 4-year cycle. Exactly, when people just come and want to get some quick win. You need a nation building orientation. You need an orientation that says, we're looking at Nigeria from here to say 50 years time, and this is where we need to be. And then the elite have a consensus around that, nation building.
Fantastic.
You know, so that successive governments, you know, take that vision forward. Yeah, their methods, you know, their emphasis could shift here and there, you know, but not like coming from a PDP in 2015 to an APC that went this other way, direction. You know, and now have an APC that is going another direction.
Hopefully we'll get it right. But let me hit you straight with this, you know. AFCFTA, African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I've seen a few consummated transactions between some countries.
Yes.
Kenya, Ghana. But I've not seen Rwanda and one other.
Yeah, Rwanda, there are about 7-8 countries. Yeah, that
I've not seen anything from Nigeria. Or maybe I missed it.
Okay, so look at what happened.
Has there been any, what is going on with AFCFTA? How come Nigeria probably lost, let me not say we have lost the plot there. Are we losing the plot? Well, how come I thought that we should be driving trade in Africa? We ought to be, well, if we are the largest economy, you know, that means that we should be playing a more prominent role. I even understand that there's only maybe 1 or 2 Nigerians in the whole setup. AFCFTA in Ghana. How can there be only 2 Nigerians or 1 Nigeria there? This is scandalous. And what are we doing about this?
Okay, so Nigeria drove the negotiations of the AFCFTA was stalled for some time until a Nigerian took over. When Nigeria became started leading negotiation, that was the late Ambassador Chido Sakwe, and he drove them hard and concluded the negotiations. Now, unfortunately, when he was in Kigali, the day they were supposed to sign the agreement, he was summoned back. Because that was when some people went to tell the former President Buhari that the agreement was going to sell Nigeria, you know, cost dumping, all manner of, you know, to my mind, uninformed, you know, submissions to the president, you know. Well, it took us time. We went through the motions of consultation, consensus building, and we signed eventually. Now, but signing is just one part of it, you know. Now, it comes back to what I was talking about.
No, we were one of the last to sign.
Yes, we were one of the last to sign, you know, signed and ratified. But that's fine. There was, we were not losing out at that moment. The only thing we lost out at that moment was the possibility of hosting the secretariat. Okay. Because I'm aware that Nigeria was also going to bid to host the secretariat. But because we did not ratify at first, we were not qualified to bid to host the secretariat at the time that the bidding was done. You know, so yeah, if there's anything we lost out, that's one of it. But in terms of actual trading didn't start until last year, you know, and up to now, it's still, well, trying to find its feet. But then the ministers, the Council of Ministers came up with an arrangement they call the Guided Trade Initiative. Okay. So that means, let's see the countries that are ready to trade, you know, under this AFCFTA. Yeah. And let's trade based on the elements of the rules of origin that has been concluded, you know. So yeah, some skeletal trade has started happening among the countries that are party to the GTI, the Guided Trade Initiative. It's just like a test run, you know. Nigeria, I learned, is trying to join the GTI at the moment, you know, and there's been some moves along the line. But generally, and that's where we come to the geostrategic or diplomatic aspect of trade, that Nigeria has not managed to pull its weight when it comes to economic diplomacy in Africa, you know, in fact, in the West African sub-region, you know, and that's due to a number of factors. One of the factors is that Nigeria is essentially insular when it comes to trade, when it comes to economic relationship, you know.
Insular,
so we have this idea that we are all fine by ourselves. Yeah. You know, and because you have the idea that you're all fine by yourselves, you have a large market, you can satisfy your market, you know, what you realize is that in your trying to maintain that local market, large market, other people are looking at your market. And in this game, the rule of the defense is attack. Exactly. You know, so when you keep having defensive interest, you're missing out on what is happening there. You're missing out from the value, the economic value that your industrial sector can reap from out there. And you're missing out from the economic influence you can wield by trading. So what happens is that we can decide to close our borders if it's against the ECOWAS regulations. You know, and nobody can challenge us because we are the big
yeah, that's what we did. Yes.
We did that. I'm giving live examples, you know, or we could decide to ban, you know, X, Y, Z, even when those products are produced within West Africa, and where our obligation under the ETLS, the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, has said we cannot ban in that manner. Mind you, they are legitimate means of restricting import in international trade.
Tariff or how?
Apart from using high tariff, you can actually use safeguard measures, you can use anti-dumping measures, you can use, you know, anti-subsidy measures. You know, those are a bit more complex, you know. But we just do it, you know, crudely. And when people look at you, they don't look at you as being serious, you know. So geopolitically, Nigeria has not played that interest of bringing the West Africa together, you know, using economic diplomacy
not even West Africa.
Not even West Africa. You know, and in Africa, you know,
for example, let me cut you short a bit. We have just 1 minute to go, but I want you to hit on I saw there was a trade between Innocent selling some cars to Sierra Leone. Yeah. I can't remember how many, maybe 2,000 cars was something. Given that one car is very expensive. Yes. Why didn't he go through the AFC, I'm not sure it went
No,
to
no, they didn't. Again, for one practical reason, the rules of origin concerning automobiles under the AFCFTA is yet to be concluded.
I see.
You know, but even beyond that, you know, like I said, Nigerians will always find our ways with or without the government. You know, so Nigeria needs to, and this is where I think I want to make the point, my concluding points, that Nigeria as a government, hopefully this new government would see that, you know, Nigeria as a government needs to realize our strategic position, not just in West Africa, but in Africa, one. Number two, we need to understand that we cannot wield the kind of influence we are supposed to wield if we're always insular, always looking out for our own interest. If you're a leader, you should look out for the interest of everybody. Yeah. You know, so we should be able to make sacrifices, in quote, you know, give and take, to be able to maintain that economic influence within the region. And then when you have the influence, what do you use it for? You use that influence to advance your private sector. You use that influence to advance a Pan-African vision, economic vision, when you're dealing with the rest of the world, you know. But when you're just sleeping there, smaller countries like Rwanda would take the boat. Rwanda
is doing something great now. Everybody comes inside Rwanda.
Everybody's going to Rwanda.
Everybody.
In fact, within close to us here, everybody's going to Ghana.
You just travel there. You go in free. Nobody harasses you. But
you don't need a visa if you're an African.
They have their security intact. But I wonder, you know. So, last word to this government.
My last word.
I want to speak direct to this government because we're going to ensure they also see this video.
Directly to this government, again, I'll come back to the issue of political will. You know, being able to put the country ahead. You know, number one, when you appoint people who have the interest of the country at heart. Number two, when they are not performing, fire them. Consequence management.
Fantastic.
You don't just say, oh, you know, he's our person.
Fantastic.
And the person is messing up the country.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leo. It's been a great session. I was speaking with Leo Ugbaja on this very, very important topic of trade. And of course, he has given us, as the expert, some ways forward, which we hope the new administration will take and run with it. Thank you very much for staying tuned thus far, and see you next week.